You're listening to a Benstown and McVeigh Media Podcast Network production. Run It Again is an inside look at the players, the coaches, and the business of sports with former NFL star and broadcaster Ron Pitts.
And 2 minutes later, I was back in the same Oklahoma drill that I got the concussion from.
And the mastermind behind the greatest show on turf, Coach Mike Martz.
And we want to force him into a vanilla defense and go to work.
Run It Again is a hard-hitting, no BS podcast that connects you directly to the source. This is Run It Again.
Hey, before we start here, we want to send out our prayers and condolences to the Marty Schottenheimer family. As you know, Marty Schottenheimer passed away on Monday at 77. Marty was battling Alzheimer's for quite some time now, but that's truly an NFL legendary coach gone.
Absolutely. He's one of the, I guess, probably the most solid football coaches in the NFL. When you look back at it, the way he taught the game, the details, he did the way it's supposed to be done. And, he just, not only just a great guy, just a great person. It was a lot of fun to be around Marty.
Yeah. Did you spend a lot of time around Marty? Did you get?
I knew Marty. Yeah, and I didn't spend a lot of time, but I knew Marty, and actually at one point, Roy, our producer, I was talking to him early this morning, and when I got fired at the Rams, I talked to Marty a few days afterwards about going down and working for him in San Diego because I was headed out that direction. I was going to take a year off anyway, and then he got fired the next day. So
boy.
14-2, but he's a strong, and players love the guy because he's convicted and he's strong and great leadership and great teacher,
Yeah. Was that the Chargers?
Yes.
He's a Charger. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And that was around the time, I know there was some, and I'm not sure who was on which side. I think Marty was on Drew Brees' side, but the general manager, A.J. Smith at the time, wasn't.
Right. Exactly right.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of what actually led to a Hall of Fame career for Drew Brees, because he ends up going to New Orleans, and the rest truly is history. So,
but and then he wanted to hire his brother as the defensive coordinator, and there was just so much friction between he and AJ that I think ownership just got tired of it.
Yep. And I knew AJ quite well, because AJ was up in Buffalo in that administration when I was drafted up there, and coach, he was up there. My father was coaching, so all the inner circles, the circles run together in the NFL, definitely. Since we're on the subject of former Kansas City Chiefs coach, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and that Super Bowl 55.
Right.
Going into this one, Mike, we knew one area was troublesome for Kansas City, and it reared its ugly head, and that was their offensive line, particularly the tackles. And I think if you added up all the moving around and changing they did, they probably had 4 position changes or more within the last 2 or 3 weeks, trying to get that solidified.
Get the right combination.
Yeah, combinations, right. Yeah. They lost Fisher, the left tackle,
right,
in that Buffalo game at the end of it, and that was just a horrible thing for them. Now, they were already without their starting right tackle, Schwartz, and so they had to move Zimmers around and then plug guys in. Wisniewski, who actually started on the practice squad, I believe, in the beginning of the season. So he ends up starting at right guard in the Super Bowl. So, but it was other things, Mike. I mean, it was a classic example of when a team just can't get going, and you could see it slowly developing. And not taking anything away from the job that the Buccaneers did, and Brady, of course, with another Super Bowl, but you could see a slow scoring, slow moving game, but you could tell where it was going, and ultimately it went there, and the Bucs end up champions.
Anytime both edges are new, I say that to offensive tackles, and we talked about this a few weeks ago. Not only it's problematic, but when you go up against a really good front like Tampa has,
and
you can't help them, I didn't make any difference who's back there. You're just not going to survive. And it just got ugly. They just couldn't block him. The thing that I was disappointed in, and I don't know why, because Andy's just better than that. There was no adjustment to help those tackles and pass protection.
Yeah, that's
now they took the back and chipped him occasionally, but it's just like their game plan was to get them all out all the time. And that Patrick was just going to get the ball out quickly, or he's going to take off with it. And yeah, it's not a good bet. And the other thing is they just couldn't get the ball back. Tampa did such a great job against that defense. Tampa went to work on them and attacked the soft spot and just kept drilling it. And the soft spot for, Kansas City's defense was they've been ahead so often, people just don't rush the ball much. But when they do and spend time doing it, they've had problems with it. And they just physically knocked him out of it in the running game and used the clock and went down and got points. So those two things on each side of the ball. But I will tell you, in my opinion, if their normal starters were in, that's a whole different game period. No matter what happened with penalties, no matter what happens with anything, because now you can protect him,
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you put a tight end there on the edge and just chip your way out?
Right.
And what they did to keep from chipping is they were running the ET games, but you've somehow reduced it to 3 receivers and keep guys in to block them. You got to protect the quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the penalties, that's something people will talk about. To me personally, and everyone comes to me and says, "Oh man, wasn't that a horrible call on the one deep ball with the guy that dove at Mike Evans' feet, blah, blah, blah." I said, I didn't agree. I thought that was PI. I mean, he's in a chase position.
Yeah.
And it's the perception of interference more than anything else. When you're in a chase position, he was clearly a full step behind. And you desperation lunge, they're going to call you.
And you should be called.
You should be called because it didn't look good. The optic was horrible, but it was interference. And again, for the second week in a row, Mike, which boggles my mind, miscues going into halftime that gave the Buccaneers deciding points, key points. First was lining up off sides. And now if you want to, I guess, bitch about one, maybe that's the one that you bitch about. You don't see that called very often in Super Bowls. But, I guess the guy lined up off sides. And then right after that, they get beat for the interference there. So
he was clearly lined up offsides. We used to have Dre Bly, who was a corner for us, and Dre was really good at that. And invariably we get that call against us. So the whole idea about the Super Bowl being called differently because it's a Super Bowl, to me, just doesn't float. I mean, these rules apply throughout the year. Why wouldn't they apply and be enforced in the Super Bowl?
Right.
And so I think, if these are fouls, you call them. Shame on you, don't foul, don't do those things. Don't line up offsides, don't hold on punt protection, tackle the guy, and all those things. And then the next one, he shanks the punt and gives him great field position. So these are self-inflicted wounds and a sloppy play that's not indicative of Kansas City.
Yeah. It's bad, Mike, when the punter loses his cool. And well, it's interesting, Townsend there. I went back and I looked at the first matchup between those two teams in Tampa Bay there, and Kansas City blew them apart. Tyreek Hill had 200 some yards receiving, and he just went crazy in the first quarter. And that's the game that he did the backflip and gave the peace sign and all that stuff. Yeah, well. They remembered that, and I don't blame Winfield Jr. for doing what he did. I probably would have done a little bit worse because that's the kind of stuff that sits in your stomach, and you use that as ammunition when you play a guy again or do a damn backflip.
Absolutely.
Okay, but I just felt like once the offense couldn't go, then the whole team couldn't go, and that's a problem. Because I see the Rams, and I'm just using them as an example of a team I think darn good team that just couldn't get there this year. I think they do the same thing, but in reverse. If their defense doesn't make it all happen in field position and turnovers and energy and explosion and big plays, then the whole team didn't go. And see, they took the big play aspect out of the game. The Buccaneers did. Kansas City didn't have any big plays. And that's why the energy looked bad.
And that's what we talked about. In order to beat them, you got to limit anything over 20 yards. You just can't give it up.
Yeah.
And they did a nice job of that. But the biggest issue, it all ends up coming back to those tackles.
Sure does.
It's an inability to run the game. And now remember the two linebackers in the Bucs. We talked about this before. Is if your linemen are suffering, now you again on run type downs or in run, you can play a 4-2 look or even a 4-1 look, and those linebackers can compensate because they're so good, they're so fast.
Yeah.
And now you can get double coverage out there on Hill.
Exactly right.
And they kept the guy over the top all the time, and to throw the ball down the field, Mahomes is going to have to hold it. And now he can't because he's scrambling when he would want at the point he wants to throw it. So they had a great plan for him. I think Kansas City going into the game knew it was shaky for him, but they didn't realize how shaky it was going to be. Obviously going back and looking at their win over them before. So again, I keep coming back to this, but two things about Kansas City in the past is they can look bad in the first half, but somehow as you go into the fourth quarter, how he just comes alive.
Yeah, right.
I think I was texting you the game. I said, this is when Mahomes is at his best, those kinds of things. And he did. He started coming alive, but they couldn't block him. They just couldn't block him. And to me, somehow, and just goes back to get another tight end in there, and chip the back out so that you're doubling and helping, even if you're only getting three guys out, or two men. You have to do something because the passing game starts in protection, period. And if you can't protect him, you don't have a chance. And it's just like anything else. When you have a great like Derek, down at the Titans, when things are tough, they hand him the ball. They just figure he's going to win it for him.
Right.
And it's the same thing here. I think they just felt like Mahomes was going to do some magic, and bring him out of it. And they were just too good. Tampa was just too good.
Yeah. I remember you said that last week. The point about if they can't handle, if the Chiefs' offensive line was struggling, then the Bucs D line, which is pretty good already, could now attack with four. They could play with two linebackers, and that would mean now you've got five other guys in the secondary. You can go man to man with one free, or you can go man to man and double a guy.
Right, exactly.
And that's exactly what
they trapped
did.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, it's math. You free up numbers to help other.
And the other thing is, when you get in the red zone, you could see this. I'm drawing a blank on my favorite one. 45, the linebacker.
Devin White.
Devin White.
Yeah,
you can free him up in that man coverage because you got one guy free. Right. So if you play cover one, and you can free him up and let him be basically a robber or a rover, so that he plays the quarterback.
Yeah,
and they chased him down. They did. They chased him down. But I think the plan that they came out with that couldn't hold up. They couldn't run the football consistently well. And what happens is a panic that sets in. So when Tampa was moving the ball and scoring and getting points and grinding that clock down, there's a sense of panic on the other side. You got to make something happen right away, especially in the second half. But in the first half, I felt that you can't do that. And they had some decent runs, but they just couldn't get going.
No, that's right. Not a lot of points initially. It got ugly late. The playmakers for the Bucs got involved. That was going to be Gronk and Brady. The two guys that got involved the last time they played, even though the Buccaneers lost the game. Again, not a big numbers game for Brady, 21-29 for 200 yards, but 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. On the other side, Mahomes had to throw 49 times, no touchdown and 2 picks. It was a classic game in terms of quarterbacking efficiency on one side, and then a quarterback protection nightmare on the other side. And then, like to your point, Mike, about panic setting in. I could see panic setting in early, and I think it was typified when whenever the Chiefs would make a big play, like Tyrann Mathieu made an interception, got a tip ball interception. Huge play, I thought, because that's what Kansas City, they needed the ball, and now they need a big play. And then it was taken away because of a penalty, a hold in the secondary.
Yeah.
And then of course, Mathieu, now he starts unraveling later on. I knew then it was probably done.
And on the sideline in those situations, it just didn't like, even in the first half, the sideline. I always like to watch body language and watch people on the sideline.
Yeah.
And something was up, something was up. Now, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I thought I read or heard that because Tampa was down there in their home situation, that they allowed Kansas City to come down a couple of days before the Super Bowl. So they missed out on all that Super Bowl stuff because of COVID. That makes sense anyway. But
yeah,
I think that's what they did. I think they traveled like it was an away game. So they spent their time up there in Kansas City getting ready for this game, then they went down and played it. So it was less of an advantage, so to speak, for Tampa. But I just think that's a huge advantage for Tampa, go to bed in your own bed, your own practice facility. It's the home game.
You're right. No, you're right. And I thought about that too. And now, you typically you've got so much going on in the fanfare and all that. It can be a distracting environment. So sometimes it's good to keep your team away from all that. But in this case, that's not what's happening. This is COVID.
Yeah.
You don't have that going on now. So I don't know. Run game, I got to give some props out to Leonard Fournette. I mean, here's a guy, Mike, that I don't know, a couple of years ago, his career was all but done, seemed like. He couldn't settle in. He was kind of a good news, bad news guy. Had some upside. We know that because of his time in the league, but for some reason, he just couldn't find a home and be settled. And I'll tell you, down the stretch here, these last two games, when it counts the most, this man has come up big. Not a lot of yards last week or 2 weeks ago against the Packers in the championship game, but in this game, this guy had 89 yards rushing, and they were key yards and a touchdown, and he just turned out big, I think.
He's still a young player. I think, what is he, 26 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
He there's a little bit of a maturity thing there. And I think when he got there, the personality, and I know this may sound corny, but the personality is so strong with a guy like Tom Brady and the expectations that his preparation and how he approaches practice, he's verbal about it, it can't help but run off and just rub off on everybody. And the focus, I think, is different for him. And it's like he's been drifting, then all of a sudden he gets to a spot where, oh, okay, that's how you play this game. That's how you prepare. And I think probably, the relationship there with the coaching staff was probably better for him than where he's been.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, and a couple guys were like Antonio Brown. There were people that were claiming Antonio Brown was clinically insane coming into the season, but now he's got a Super Bowl ring. But isn't that the way life is in the NFL?
Yeah.
One minute we're trying to figure out why Tom Brady called a timeout that he didn't have as time's winding down in Chicago, right?
Right. I remember that.
1 minute Bruce Arians is calling out Tom Brady. 1 minute we're talking about he's too old and this and that. And fast forward a couple months later, guys holding up another trophy. So I tell you, the NFL is a tricky business, unpredictable business.
That's why that position, the quarterback position, along with the head coach, there has to be a steadfast, just a belief in yourself where you just don't get knocked off the mark. You know what I mean? You're on the bicycle and you can't get bumped off. You just keep that emotional plane and you just don't let that stuff bother you. It's hard to do, but the really tough guys, the great ones, do it.
Gosh, man, I think so. That's what that shows me. That doesn't show. It shows me that it's not about your physical ability. It's not about
exactly.
Yeah, it's not about how many hundreds of millions they gave you.
Yep.
And how good you looked in the combine. It's not about it. I think it's about your preparation and that mental toughness to be able to just stick to what you know is going to work or what you know is right and what works for you. And I think Arians let him stick to that. I think he helped that process.
And I think Arians understands that Tom of all players I've ever seen in the league, has learned to be at his best when things are at their worst. That's why we talked about, when they lost in New Orleans, those two ugly wins in the playoffs, they're going to play him. I mean, I would just never bet against Tom Brady in a deal like that. He's such the competitive part of him. And, they got blown out against Kansas City in the season. Coming back on this thing, it's just pretty hard to bet against Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Because he always knows how to respond. He's always responded like that. And that's what makes him so unique.
Yep. Yep. So chalk up another one for him. That's 7, and a big win for the franchise. And, I like to see these older coaches get something going. So stay by your phone, Mike. You might be getting some calls, like I said. 68 years old, wins a Super Bowl. And we know this is a copycat league. So that tells me one thing, that, more coaches like that are going to be asked to offer their input, and rightfully so.
Well, hopefully there's some veterans assistants that have been in the league for quite some time that haven't gotten the opportunity. We'll get a call. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Todd Bowles at some point, we've talked about this before, the lack of minority hiring, but Todd Bowles, he put together one heck of a scheme there. Now he didn't make many mistakes on that one.
He was so specific in the pass rush in how to affect those ends without being to help them. In other words, if it was just a straight rush up all the time, you can chip and all that stuff. But they started to run these games where you can't chip them.
No,
where you actually have to keep them in there. So
that's right.
And I just watch everything they did and how prepared they were to take Hill out. Hill got frustrated. They just shut him down until the end. So
yeah,
that's coaching. Yeah, that's great preparation and knowing how to take away what they do best. And they did that.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and it's bad when you see not only Hill but Travis Kelce drop a ball. When I saw Travis Kelce's drop, I was like,
yeah.
But hey, so Mike, now we go into what is called the NFL offseason, and that's almost another show. All right, a pretty good show, and it's going to be even better this year with COVID co-starring. So the NFL free agency starts officially March 17th. But between the 23rd and the 9th, February 23rd and March 9th, is franchise transition designation period. Okay, so that's where guys who are taggable, guys like, say, Dak Prescott, who played this year with the franchise tag, which said he's got to make an average of the top 3 players at his position for a 1-year deal. Now you have to redesignate. You either tag him again, which I understand you can tag a guy 2 years in a row.
Yes.
Or you got to give him a long-term deal, or you got to deal him. One or the other.
Right.
So I've got my list of and I'll start with quarterbacks, Mike. I got my list of guys here, and we know there's other positions and important positions, but let's just start here. So Dak, what do you think they're going to do with Dak? And then we'll get on to Wentz, Darnold, and some of the other guys, even Rodgers and so forth.
I think they need to tag him. Yeah. I think with their cap situation, the way it is, the way I understand it, they got 4 or 5 guys that they're getting a big hit on their cap right now. Until they can clean that up, it might take another year. So they may have to go through this 2-year period before they can propose something to him that he'll take. That's seems doable for him. Yeah, I don't think there's any way he gets out of the Cowboys, particularly this year. But I think it'd be hard for him to clear the cap space to give him what he wants, and he probably deserves it. But I think he'll probably get tagged again. I don't know how they give him the numbers that he wants with the cap situation that they have right now.
Yeah, no, they're over the cap a little bit. I'm just looking at numbers here, and I'm not saying these numbers are or what the general manager has on his desk. This is, I'm looking off of things on the internet, but they're showing around 20 million under the cap. But yeah, that's not including Dak being signed to that. So yeah, they've got some things to do.
Yeah, that doesn't include his contract right now.
Right. So that could easily blow that away. I'll just jump to New Orleans just because they are the most in trouble team as far as cap space. They're 78 million over the cap. Drew Brees, I don't want to say restructured. He took the minimum for this year, but the talk is that Drew has got the TV contract, in his desk behind him, and he's going to jump and do that. But that said, maybe he's just doing the team a solid because they've got to figure out how to maneuver their cap space right now.
No question. I'm a little surprised. And maybe he's just putting off until they figure it out personnel-wise what they want to do at quarterback after Drew, So
yeah,
maybe he still is undecided. That's why he's willing to do that and take the minimum. How much money do you need? I mean, he's obviously, and I know Drew a little bit enough to know that it's about playing for him at this point. He's not concerned about the money.
Right.
And if he can help the organization, Marshall did that for us at the Rams.
Yeah.
Towards the end there, he just, he had plenty of money. He was just, he's helping the organization. I think that he's trying to help the organization and still try to figure out whether he wants to play. That leaves the door open for him by taking that deal to come back another year. I'm not sure he still has made that decision.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that Marshall would restructure for the team, and that's a guy that understood the value of winning. And like you said, you got the money. How much more money do you need?
Right, exactly.
Right, yeah. The Eagles. Now, the Eagles, the second most cap-stressed team right now at $51 million over the cap. The salary cap right now is $175 million. There's talk that it may be adjusted up to in the 180s, $185 million per team spending. We'll see. The two sides, NFL and NFLPA, are negotiating on that one. But the Eagles now have a Carson Wentz issue. So what do you think happens with Wentz?
So what's he have left on his contract? I'm not familiar with his contract.
Yeah, I can.
I think it just depends on if they were to move him right now. That's a huge hit on their cap. Because it all gets accelerated into that year.
He's got a dead cap space of $60 million. Call it 60. So the team would take a $34 million cap hit.
Right.
They're going to take a $34 million cap hit with him. He's got a base of 15, signing bonus, roster, some other bonuses in there that total up to about $20 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
but when he leaves, if they're to trade him, and unless the team takes on, some of that, the new team, then, it accelerates into their cap.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and that's hard. That's hard on a team, but you've got to take that hit. And, it's just like Brady leaving New England. That all goes back to, being able to manage the cap and discard stuff that was going to accelerate and biting the bullet and taking that number that year and just dealing with it until you can clear it.
Funny you mentioned Brady and the Patriots, because the Patriots, their cap space right now, $64 million. So, and if I scroll down here, man, I love all this new thing. So, everyone keeps saying, okay, you are in salary cap purgatory. And that was one of the reasons they dealt Brady and so on and so forth. So now where do they go? They've got to get the quarterback thing right. They don't have it right. Cam wasn't the answer, isn't the answer, at least for right now. So, right. Do you believe in the Stidham kid or do you try to go get someone else?
Well, you have to get somebody else. I mean, there's no question you have to get somebody else. And it's that environment there for the quarterback, replacing Tom Brady, no matter what you do, it's not going to be good enough. So you have to be careful, who's going to want to go there. It's a great team and whatnot, but still, I think you're going to have to do it through the draft. I think they're going to have to do it through the draft and hopefully get a solid guy in there until this young man, whoever they draft, comes through.
Yeah, right. The Jets now in Sam Darnold. There's talk that Darnold could end up in San Francisco.
Okay, so Darnold is interesting because, what happened to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl is kind of what Darnold went through the whole year at the Jets. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you can't protect him, no matter what, it's just not going to look good. He's going to have the bad numbers like Patrick did. And but he didn't have the receivers, right? So you really don't know Sam Darnold, until you get him on a good team and support him and whatnot. So the jury's still out on him. I still think he's a real good player. I think San Francisco, it's very worthwhile, and I think San Francisco, didn't they just, Josh Rosen, didn't they just pick him up? I think they just signed Josh Rosen off the practice squad down there at Tampa. So, they're going to bring in a bunch of them, sort through the pile and get the right guy.
Wow, poor Josh, man. He's bouncing around. It's a first round pick, boy. It's just
the only thing I would say about poor Josh is that's Josh's fault. You got to show up and play, and you're where you are because not because of somebody else. So buck up, kid.
Yeah. What did he say after the draft? He said, "I'm going to make every NFL team regret not picking me." That made him drop. But I said, my gosh, son, you're still a first round pick. You're acting like you dropped to the 5th round or something.
Sometimes, is the old saying is if you keep your mouth shut, people think you're smart until you open it up. So that's one of those things where you just keep your mouth shut, kid. And
yeah.
Let the play.
Okay. Right. Okay. Deshaun Watson. I know he's upset down there and probably rightfully so. And he wants some wanted say-so in the head coaching selection process. They end up going with Coach David Culley. All right. What happens now? Is there a point where you need your quarterback to either stop complaining and get on board with whatever you're doing, or you need to get him out of there because he's slowing down the ship? Right or wrong, he's taking the ship in a different direction.
He's a great player, and I don't know him.
Yeah.
I just cringe when players start to speak out about the organization and the business part of it.
And management. Yeah.
And how things should be done. And I know this, and run it by me first. And it's like, you just can't, even if you feel that way, you just don't go public with something like that. Now you can go into, ownership and just say, hey, look, I would just like to be involved in it, the interview process, and at least have a right of refusal in one of them. Yeah. So if you're going to hire somebody I really don't like, I'd like to be able to voice that, and then you do what you do. But they come out, and Russell Wilson said the same thing about coaches up there. He wants the ability to have the say so on who they hire. Yeah. Well, that's just a bad road to start down. It's just because that's a can of worms you just can't cover up again. Just let people do their job, and you got enough going on there, and trust that you're gonna do the best thing for them.
Mike, you're right. I agree. I know what he's complaining about, and he's right. But I don't think you're gonna win that one in the end of the day. That's like an employee that works for I don't know, Tesla. Okay, and he puts the bumper on the car and hooks up an electrical part, there in the factory somewhere. And, he's tired of the way that Elon Musk, handles his shares and his boardroom. And he's going to go up there and tell him how to fix the boardroom. Right. Elon's going to say, listen, either you go back down there and continue to put that part on that car for $25 an hour or whatever it is I'm paying you, or we'll find someone else. So there's a big difference between his employee level and the owner's level.
And I think that's what Brett Favre was getting at when he got killed on the comment. But I think he was, and I don't mean to speak for him because it was kind of a weird comment, but you just be appreciative of what you got in play. And behind closed doors, you go in and give me your opinion. And then like Drew Brees, if it's just not somehow, some way, you work it out. But you don't want that dirty laundry on a line out in the front yard for everybody to see. You just don't want that.
Yeah. No, I like what you said. You go in, tell them, and then that's it. And then if it doesn't work, now if you want to get out, then you can get out. But doing all this, you're not going to force an owner or management to do anything. Because
then now when you voted against whoever they hired, that's an adversarial stature or position to be in before a guy even gets there.
That's what I'm saying. Right. Yeah, exactly. So, Okay, so two guys here's two guys, Rodgers and Matt Ryan. It's feeling like Matt Ryan's going to stay there.
Yeah, I can't imagine. We talked about this before. I can't imagine Matt leaving there. I just think it's probably an emotional thing as well as it's just the right thing to do to keep Matt there. He's been there his whole career. He's taken him to a Super Bowl, even though there's probably a pretty good cap hit with his salary coming. To just jettison him because of the money at this point in his career and what he's meant to that organization, to me, just be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that he's still a good player and has got plenty left in the tank. There's just other things they got to do there. And particularly on defense, you got to fix that.
Yeah. He's set to, he had a base salary of just $23 million. This year,
I mean, yeah, exactly. So that's doable for them. There's no reason to jettison him.
That's funny. We talk it, man, just 23 million. Yeah. A $40 million cap hit to answer your question, but that's the high money world we're in now.
So in 1979, I was at Fresno State as a coordinator, and I went over to watch the 49ers practice. Bill Walsh's first year at the 49ers.
Yeah.
And we had a quarterback when I was coach at San Jose State in 1975 named Steve DeBerg, who ended up playing in the league for 20 years.
Yep.
So Steve DeBerg had, I think he was at Kansas City at that time. I can't remember. But anyway, he had gone to San Francisco. They picked him up, and they were trying to do a deal with him. And I remember going to lunch with Steve DeBerg, and and actually Bill Walsh was negotiating a lot of that. So we're sitting at lunch, and of course he starts throwing out these numbers. He says, they want to pay me 50. I want 55. And I said, I'm worth that. That's the going rate, this, that, and the other thing. Now, and I'm looking at the sense of $55,000 might have been $55 million to me at that point,
Right.
But you go back from 1979, here's a starter in the NFL at San Francisco, and they're trying to argue between $50,000 and $55,000 for the starter at the San Francisco 49ers.
What year was that, Mike?
1979.
Yeah, see, that was pre-Joe Montana.
Well, they drafted Joe then, and here's what Bill told.
Yeah.
I talked to him after practice. Actually, Bill was so good to coaches. Yeah. I mean, he sat down and talked to me for about an hour after practice. He didn't know me from Adam, right?
Yeah.
I asked him what he thought, how he was going to build. He says, we picked a third round quarterback up. Of course, Joe Montana from Notre Dame, and I said, he's not very big, is he? He says, nah. He said, but he's special. You watch, he's special.
He knew.
And so Steve was a stopgap until, and he knew that.
That's right. He was. Yeah, that's exactly right. Boy, good player, though. I played against him now. He was a smart guy. Maybe not a whole lot there at that time. When I played against him, he was later part of his career. But
yeah,
don't make a mistake, boy. He'll get you. Hell, he got me once. So yeah, but yeah. So, and everyone we're talking about here, quarterback wise, Mike, are guys that are either contracts are up or they're disgruntled. The team's disgruntled, they're disgruntled. So one way or another, when you got guys like Trubisky, Jimmy G, they're out there. So, that something has to happen there. But
the guy to me that has a fog around him is Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Because, when they got into the Super Bowl, we talked about this. They dumbed things down a little bit. They made it's like they didn't want him. They didn't trust him to win the game.
Yeah. And
yet later, when he was playing healthy before he got injured, he was playing really good, and they kind of put it on him. I don't know what he is.
I don't exactly. I don't either. No. I'll tell you what they think he is. They don't think he's the guy.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Just like the Rams didn't think Goff was the guy. I was thinking about that again today. And I look back at every game that the Rams lost. And, the Rams went to Tampa and beat the Bucs. And it was earlier in the year, and the Bucs were a different team in some ways, but in other ways they weren't. But that's the kind of stuff that makes teams pull the trigger like they pulled on Goff. Because they sat back there and they watched the Buccaneers make this run through the playoffs. And it starts to eat at your craw. Yeah, and you're like, son of a. Now, what did we do wrong? What's missing with us that we're sitting here at home punched out, but yet they go to Green Bay and beat a team and we went down there to Tampa and beat them. And then it all starts, it's like a murder mystery. It all starts to come together in the end. It's like, that's the problem.
But see,
So
no matter what, a good quarterback isn't good enough. They're all looking for that special player quarterback.
Yeah.
That, the leadership, the toughness, all that stuff. Like we're talking about Tom and Mahomes and all these guys, they've got that competitive part and the leadership that everybody feeds on, and they don't feel that. And if you've been around Goff, he's a mild-mannered kind of guy, and they just don't see that in him. Now, whether he has that or not, they might be wrong. You never know.
Yeah, but it's something, Mike. It's some kind of attitude, an edge, or something. And a guy doesn't have to be a yeller and screamer.
No, absolutely not.
But it's something that when he's around. Like, honestly, two guys, and one of them very well, Kurt Warner, and the other one I'll pick Tom Brady. Yeah, if you didn't know Tom Brady, you didn't know much about football, you would think that he was a stockbroker,
right?
An insurance salesman.
Yeah.
And Kurt could sell you that he was a minister and an FCA guy, right?
Right.
These are not yeller and screamer in your face, this and that. They can be. But I'm just, from what I've observed, Mike, there's something else that comes out once that game starts, once that practice starts, once that meeting starts. Something comes out in these guys that makes them who they are. And that's again, what everyone is looking for.
It's that edge. And again, like we've always said, that position, the best competitor on the team has to be the quarterback. It has to be.
You're
right. Yep. And in order to have that, you have that edge. So, Kurt initially, when he played for us, he didn't say anything. It was business, and we had short conversations. Very pleasant guy, but he was so intense on taking full advantage of his opportunity. He was not going to get distracted by anything.
Yeah, and
believe me, I tried to distract him, on purpose, just
right
because I understood. Here's a guy that's completely untested, and what was going to happen to him. So I'd mess with him a little bit, But boy, once he established that aura, that toughness, that confidence that he has, he walks in the huddle, the players respond to it without saying a word. They just know this guy's got it. You just know. And I think that factor for Goff, I think, was probably missing in the eyes of the Rams.
Yeah, 3 coaches did one thing with 2 different quarterbacks. And the thing that those quarterbacks have in common is they're Hall of Fame, and one will be Hall of Fame, and they're Super Bowl winners. And the 3 coaches, or at least the 2 coaches, are you and Bruce Arians, okay? And you told me this weeks ago. You figured out that the team and the offense will run through Kurt Warner, all right? Your schemes, your thoughts on how it should work will run through him and what he does best. And you remember a couple of weeks ago, Bruce Arians said, I let Tom Brady coach. We're gonna do what he does best, and we're gonna do it this way. He's got the rings.
Right.
That's the common factor I see between those 2 quarterbacks and you 2 coaches and winning Super Bowls.
The thing about working with Kurt was we worked hard at challenging him every week with stuff that we didn't really need to, just to kind of keep ahead and keep him on his toes. But he loved it. He embraced it. And we had X and O back and forth a little bit, but he understood what we did so well that when guys weren't quite right in their route, they'd come back and he'd whisper coach them. He'd walk over to him and just say, hey, I expected you to be at 18, not 16 or whatever. And they got it. And then and I didn't have to do that anymore.
Whisper coaching.
Yeah, I didn't have to do it anymore. He'd tell the lineman, he'd say to one of the linemen, hey, just point him out first, or if you can't do this, then let's call this or whatever. But so there was a communication that went on all the time that I wasn't privileged to, but I trusted him because he knew it as much as I did. And that's what's going on with Tom Brady. He knows it as well or better than anybody down there. And that's not a knock on the offensive coordinator down here. I think he's good. I think he's really good. But And Tom, he didn't put the game plan together, but he has input to it. But he'll make his comments, and he has a vision, as Kurt did, and we all shared the same vision of how this is supposed to be, right? So on any particular play, you visualize how those receivers, the back or the line's going to block. You visualize, and then you go to work at getting it done like that. Yeah. And if there's anybody bucking the system out there, well, they got to be dealt with, and then you just pull them aside. And I never had to do that. He did that.
Yeah. I like that whisper coaching.
Yeah, that's
that goes a long way. No, that goes a long way. No,
did you see Tom Brady in the first quarter? And I don't know who number 18 is. One of their other receivers there at the Bucks, and they're going in the red zone, and they ran a pick play, that little stack formation, receiver on receiver guy went like this, and then he came underneath it.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, no,
and he just flipped it and stuck it right on his chest.
Yeah,
he dropped it, and it was he just, and I don't know who he is, but he just nonchalantly just like it was, I dropped it, one of those things. And as he's walking off, they put the camera on Tom Brady, and he had him in his gaze.
No, I saw that.
And he wouldn't look away until that young man looked at him, and then you never saw 18 in the game again.
Was that Godwin?
No, Godwin.
Was it not Godwin? What's that?
I can't remember who it was, but boy, he got him in his game, and then I really didn't see him anymore. But that young man did not play at the same level as the rest of them.
Yeah.
At that point, I mean, they were playing at such a high level, he just wasn't going to tolerate it.
Yeah, no, that's right. I saw that.
Yeah.
And I knew something had gone wrong. I know who that was. Yeah, I'm looking at here. That was Tyler Johnson. Okay. Yeah, Tyler, it wasn't Godwin. It was Johnson. Yeah. I knew something had gone wrong, and Brady was hot about it.
I don't think he saw the field again the rest of the game. I really don't. Because I looked for him on purpose. He might have been in there. But I watched him one time. He was supposed to block somebody. He just did the Olay on him, and I think after that they said, "Nah, this is a Super Bowl, buddy. You're out of here."
Oh no, they knew that the game was too big for this young man.
Yeah,
so that's an important thing to know. You got to know when the game is too big for some of these guys, because I think every time you go into a Super Bowl, it will be too big for a handful of people.
But see, to me, there's a clear understanding at that point and a demonstration of what's expected in the level of performance.
Yeah.
And Tom sets that, and basically Kurt had set that through his play and how he prepared and how he practiced. So he didn't have to say much. And fortunately around him, that Tom didn't have this, is we had a bunch of guys that had that same commitment and intensity, Marshall and Torrey and Isaac. So I got to tell you a quick story. Oz comes in, and one of our very first practices, we're in team, and he's kind of lumpty dumping along. He's not running at full speed, drops a pass. It's just like, it's practice. And so Isaac and Marshall pull him aside, and I didn't say anything to him. I just watched him over there. And after practice, I said, "Marshall, what happened with Oz?" And he said, "Nothing." He said, "We just told him that don't know where you've been or what you think football's about. But we don't do that here. That's not who we are." And when that happens, then and Kurt didn't have to say anything to him. And Kurt was frustrated with him. Kurt just gave him the look, and the guys took care of it.
Yeah.
But that's what happens on those really good teams, Peyton Manning and, Tom Brady. There's a level of performance sense that everybody buys in. If there's anybody falling off of that, they rush over and they take care of it.
That's right. That's a great point, man. That's a great story. Yeah. Yeah. The locker room, if you've coached it right and they've brought in the right players, your personnel guys, it should run itself to a degree.
And you know what, Ron, what you just said is just having the right people is everything.
Yeah.
Your leadership has got to be the right leadership. Deshaun Watson, is he the right leadership down there because of all the things that he said? Well, Isaac Bruce was really vocal before I got there, and it was kind of a malcontent a little bit.
Yeah.
He didn't want a leadership role, and they're trying to make him a leader. He said, just back off and let him go. That's not who he is. But he's such a good player. He should. No, that's not who he is.
Yeah.
So Deshaun Watson, that's why I was a little disappointed in him, because basically he'll have control or respect in that locker room, and it's got to be the right respect.
Yeah. And he hasn't won one yet. It's a little different if a guy has won one. Okay. Like Russell Wilson is venting. a little bit now. I'm reading reports that he's tired of, not getting protected enough and blah, 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 blah. So, but he's got one under his belt. He's got one on the wall. So
Yeah.
he's got a little bit of that. But to your point, that's got to be handled the right way, because it can be alienating as best. Mike, let me take you back to, and we'll wrap up. We're getting close here. We'll wrap up. Can the Bucks repeat on this one now, or is this one of these where every year is a different year and next year could be completely different for them?
Here's where the Bucks are different to me. They started settling their foundation during the season, not before a year ago, and it was a quick process. They're young on defense. They're so good up front on defense, and they've got so much firepower now on offense.
Yeah,
that I do believe that whether Tom's there or not, they've got a chance of being a factor, at the end of the year for quite some time if they can keep these guys together.
That's interesting, whether Tom is there or not.
Well, because he set the tone for them.
Yeah.
They understand now, and there's enough good players there that, this is how we do things now.
Yeah.
But it took all year. It took them most year, because remember, the receivers wouldn't run fast, and they broke it off short, and you could see his frustration. Well, that level of expectation now has been set.
Yeah.
But they're so good on defense, personnel wise.
Yeah.
And if they keep their defensive coordinator there, I think they can. I think they can absolutely do it.
How about the Chiefs? You would think they need to get the defense going now. That was a wake up call for that to me.
Yeah, but I'd be careful that they just need to keep those two tackles, because remember, those two tackles are really good players, right?
Yeah.
If they play, that's a different game to me. And I don't mean any disrespect to Tampa Bay, but if their two starters were in there, that's a different game.
You're right.
It's a different game.
You're right. You're right. And they're like some other defenses I know. They're a defense that relies on those offensive points and the big plays, and they all get going and they all start jumping around, and that energy left the game. And when the energy left that game, then things changed for them. And it, like you said, it started with the tackles. So
yeah,
that's where that one will go. So, Mike, our free agent period will end April 23rd, and April 29th through May 1st, man, will be the NFL draft. And this is our last show. So we're going to be back, I guess, around draft time, and we'll do it all over again.
Yeah, looking forward to it, right? It's been a lot of fun this season. It really has been, because of all the turmoil and things with COVID and all things that have happened. It's been a fun year
it's been great working with you, man. And I'm going to miss the stories. I can't wait till draft time, because I know you've always got some good stories for us.
Well, it's probably the one thing I have anymore is a story.
You can always run it again, Mike, and tell some of those good stories, because you've always got something new. Like the DeBerg story. I don't think I'd heard that one before.
Yeah, $55,000.
Yeah. Well, hey, before we say a final goodbye, we've got to get one big kudos in here to not only everyone at the Benstown organization set up there, and Mike McVeigh and his group, for allowing us to get on the air, but also for our executive producer, Mr. Roy Hamilton, the Emmy Award-winning executive producer, Mr. Roy Hamilton. Maybe he can show his face here and pop on. Can you get on, Roy?
Boss man.
Yeah, can you get on? Roy doesn't like to jump on camera too much. Hey, there he is. There he is. And not only is he an Emmy Award-winning producer, this man played in the NBA. Started at UCLA as well. Recruited by John Wooden. I mean, my goodness. He's got some pelts on that wall too.
Special, yeah. Just a little side note to that too. He didn't play with an 8-foot basket either, Ron.
Oh, that's a knock on me. You know what? That's okay. I'm mentally tough. People can say whatever they want to. Me and my 8-foot rim, I go up there every day and I just
slamming, jamming.
I stick to the program. I stick to the program.
Thank you, guys. It was great. It was a great season. You guys are unbelievable, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, and
thank you.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you to all our listeners and viewers for tuning in to us. Running again, and we can't wait to see you guys next season. Everybody stay healthy, stay safe.